Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to season 2 of Conversations in Pop Culture. And before I introduce my guest, I do want to remind everybody that there are a bunch of links in the description up above. Whether you're watching on Facebook, you're watching on YouTube, you're watching in my comic group. And if you're not a member of that group, please join. It's totally free, and we accept almost everybody in comics. But more importantly, there is a Kickstarter link up there. So please go click that link if you like what you hear in this interview, as well as there is Buy Me a Coffee, because I am a fan-supported show at the moment, and you have to support indie. And so I'm very excited because I have with me comic creator and very much the watcher of his universe, Lawrence James King, from Constant Hustle Comics. So welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, man. I really appreciate this. I really do. How are you?
Yeah, no, I'm very, very excited to have you on because obviously I saw your project, had one thought going into it, clearly had a different thought coming out of it. And it's so interesting because right now what's going on is that you have the Kickstarter Eviction Bellum Book 1 is currently being kickstarted. I think you got 19 or 18 days left on it. And there's a lot of stuff going on, but the thing that I first want to talk about, and I think it's going to make sense, is Constant Hustle Comics, because some people might be hearing about this for the first time, and you've been doing it for about 5-6 years now. So what is Constant Hustle Comics, and what type of comics you produce, and what's going on? Because it's very much a universe world.
So, Constant Hustle Comics is the bringing together of like 6 creators that each have their own properties. Most of us have a few properties of our own, and it's all part of the Noir State. The Noir State is the multiversal entity that encompasses everyone's comics. And the way it goes is there was a humongous battle between all the superheroes and all the supervillains. And in that battle, most, if not 90 to 95% of both died. So all of our heroes pretty much are brand new heroes or new in these roles. The power that they may possess may be as old as time, but they are new in these roles. So it covers everything from a family. I wrote one called The Last Line, which is my creator property, and it's based on a family, based on my family. But in the family, the matriarch passes, and the patriarch goes around looking for power or superpowers in order to settle the score with the one supervillain that is still alive. The power he goes looking for is sentient, and it has to choose between picking him or picking his children to give the power to. So we have different lines like that and that's called The Last Line. There's one from Charles Simpson called Zero Gravity, Dwayne Welch called SF3 or Carnivore. So Ashley Cheatham called Grim Hero, where the Grim Reaper has to become a superhero. So we have a bunch of properties that we have out and ready for mass consumption.
And so obviously we're going to talk a little bit about that, but how did this even form? Because obviously 6 creators coming together, everybody sort of has their own properties, but there also has to be rules for the general world, and even just figuring out, the business side of it, and just even having the idea to form, I guess, a union to some degree, because obviously I am from the comic book investing world, and I invest heavily in comics. I'm building out an entire project with that. And so I understand joining forces with people, is protection. It's also when everybody wants to print their book, there's a lot of advantage. Forming a corp or an LLC or anything like that is very cool. And also, you have a bunch of books coming out. Well, printing deals can be more effective, or versus something like this, you're marketing everybody right now, despite them not being here. And so how did it all form about, though? Because it is super interesting when we see this happening. And I think a lot more of it needs to happen.
Well, so I had Constant Hustle Comics by myself, and I was coming up with a couple of comic lines alone. And as I started bringing people on to do different things for me, like character design that Charles Simpson I was talking about, he had a book that he was thinking about doing. So I said, why don't I help you with your book? You help me with the character design. To be honest with you, I'm truly blessed because I came across an amazing group of people that have all been able to become family. And that's exactly what we are. We are a creator based family. So uh, whenever we put a book together, and let's say I do all the marketing, not all of it, but I do most of the marketing for everybody and give everybody the post they're supposed to put up, and everybody does their whole thing, and then the Kickstarter campaign goes and is funded. Knock on wood, hopefully it is. I don't keep any of that money. It's the creator who came up with the property that keeps that money. I don't have anything to do with their cash. They developed the book. They found their artist. I mean, we have a certain pool of artists we work with, but they found their artists
So if
and
they, I'll give you an example of this, not to interrupt. If they wanted to go out and get a top variant artist,
right.
that's completely within their jurisdiction.
That's
And
within their jurisdiction to do. Yeah. Yep. And if they didn't have, let's say if they didn't have enough money, say if they came to me and said, I want to go out and get a top-notch artist because I think the name along with this artist will carry it over, will translate over in the Kickstarter world, and their product is amazing. But once I do that, I don't have enough money to pay the colorist, or I'm going to be, I'm going to be kind of short with that, or whichever it may be. Then of course, me being the person who owns the company, I'll step in and say, okay, I'll cover this part of it for you, and when you get the Kickstarter money, you can put it back in the pot after that. Once again, it's not my cash because I don't keep any money from them. They put it back in the Constant Hustle Comics money, and that's where that goes. We
and so
don't.
to even talk about that, because that's very
Uh,
interesting, because sometimes what happens, and I know we're getting a little bit into the business, and we're going to get into the book in a
that's fine.
second, is that what that gives those that gives an ability for an artist or for a comic to take a little bit of a risk and maybe possibly pick up an additional variant or something, and obviously it gives a little bit of a seed money, and then obviously that seed money is granted back, and then when
Right.
somebody else needs to use that seed money, it's there too, and it gets people over the hump and gives sort of an edge, and it's very helpful when you have that going on. And we're not talking about like tens of thousands of dollars. We're talking
Right.
maybe like $1,000 at the most. Even that would be expensive. But it's the idea that every penny counts in a Kickstarter, and it's
Yes.
not a safety net, but it's an advantageous net. And it's very cool that you're doing that, because I don't know how many other people are doing that, and it's very
Well,
helpful to make that
yeah.
happen. And it also is good business in some ways.
Yeah. We. So if a creator comes to me and they're telling me about their property and we're going over it, and we're a self-contained unit, so we have editors and we have our graphic designer that's part of everything, and we're trying to bring another social, or we're bringing a social media person on, so we can all get together and I can say, okay, I know an artist that'd be great for your variant, so I tell you what I'm going to do. I'm just going to have them do one for you. You concentrate on what you're doing, and then when they have a rough draft of it, I'll send it to you. If you do not like it, then I'll handle all edits and everything like that for you. Or if they come to me and say, all right, I've written the first draft of the script, I say, okay, I'll bring an editor on. I'll make sure the editor looks over everything, and then the editor and I will go back and forth, and then I'll return the script and say, okay, here are the notes. Go ahead and go through it. I think that leaves the creator with the ability to do more than just try to wear all the hats. I mean, if it's my baby, that's one thing.
And
But
that's something I want to talk about too, where this is super interesting, because I don't know how familiar you are with who I've interviewed, but me and Tyler Carpenter were speaking about this, and and I'm going to say something that's controversial, but I find comic people are some of the most creative people when they're writing a story, but when it comes to marketing their products, they're some of the least creative. And it's not that they're not interested in trying; it's the fact that if you're writing your story, you're booking your artists, you're communicating, and then all of a sudden you have to do social media, and then you wrote the Kickstarter, and then you got to do fulfillment. After a while, you're going to tap out, and you're not going to push, want it to be on people's shows, for instance. You're not going to
right,
want to drive hard into this. And so
right,
now what's going on is that what you're doing in a lot of ways is you're providing a lot of, that and maybe taking 10% of that off somebody's plate by dealing with an editor or possibly helping somebody, you know, navigate a variant cover. And that's very helpful because I think that's what a lot of people need is they need not necessarily a full team, but they need somebody to alleviate 10%. And this is something that I think you're doing very well, and it's a very good service in a lot of ways, more so, and it's beyond important. I mean, I've had this discussion with people where I said maybe the most important person in your Kickstarter is not the writer or the artist or the cover artist. Maybe it's bringing on a marketer who's going to bring you, you know, $10,000 raised in on your Kickstarter, or somebody who's doing what you're doing with this, because now the creator can actually breathe and say, okay, I now have one less problem to work on. And so I think that's super smart. Whether you intend it or not, that's what you're doing, and it's brilliant in a lot of ways because it probably helps tremendously.
Well, I took notes from other creators or other publishers that that's what they were doing for their people, and I heard somebody say one time, if you want to try to be successful, if you're going to try to be as successful as a person, try to study what they do and take the best parts of it that you feel are the best parts of it, and then add your own to it after. So that's what I try to do. Like the writer of this story, right at the beginning of it, we had a conversation where he was saying, you know, I've got a granddaughter on the way, like within a week or two, and my job is crazy right now, so I'm gonna need a lot of help with this Kickstarter part of it. I said, well, you know, you don't have to even worry about that, because the main focus for us is that everybody to succeed. That is the it doesn't look good if you have a team of creators and one person's Kickstarter doesn't even generate a couple $100 and another person's Kickstarter generates everything they want and maybe 150 to 180% more. It doesn't make you look good as a group. Apparently something is lacking here, but if they're part of your team and you feel that they're worth getting back or getting behind, then you as a leader, or you and your team should be part of the conversation. How do we bring this person up to where everybody else is? We have people involved in our Kickstarter that's out right now who you haven't, or if you're up on Constant Hustle Comics Heroes, you haven't seen their characters yet. So we every week try to do a live stream to let people know this is some of the characters that you're going to see in the book. This is what their power set is. This is the creator of said characters. That way people can get accustomed to who they are first before they buy the book and they realize what we are trying to do. And that's one of the goals we have as well, trying to bring awareness to our brand and to the characters we have inside our brand. Because, you know, we're not the most namesake type of indie creators, not yet.
You're starting out. Don't say short.
Right.
It's the idea that you have built what is known as a collective. Right. And I use that word where it's a starting out point. I mean, it took me 8 years to get here. So I'm the first person to understand what it's like to climb. And then on my first show, it took me, 7 years to break 100 a week. Okay. And I broke 100 a week. I was ecstatic. And it sounds crazy. It's not about money. And now I haven't released an episode in almost 18 months, and I'm doing 200 plays a day without me launching only one episode a day, which is insane because I've worked my ass off to get there, and I'm still not there, and I'm still climbing. But it's the idea that we all start out somewhere, and you're building a collective, and you're building something very small that grows and grows and grows, but you're also building the infrastructure. I mean, it's very, very complicated to build this, and I don't think people understand what you're building, how you're building it, why you're building it, and what it actually takes, and laying out tracks and all that stuff. And so it's very interesting. And then to even go further into this, because before we can talk about the book, we have to talk about something else where, as you stated, there's all these titles by you and a variety of other people. And, well, that's kind of what this Kickstarter is to some degree, is that it's the meeting of an event happened that set all these books out. So I'm going to stop me if I'm wrong here. So the way I equate it is that almost a Big Bang event type thing happened, and your universe wiped out a bunch of heroes. Now we have 6 to 8 comics, I think it is safe to say, and
Yep.
they're all experiencing the rise of new heroes. And well, now we're getting back into that big bang, and that's where this Kickstarter, Eviction Bellum book one is coming out. And so, what prompted this? Because there's a lot of stuff going on.
Well, Dwayne Welch, one of our creators, he's the creator of a book called Carnivore and another book called SF3. He had the idea 2 years ago. This is 2 years in the making, and he had the idea for, okay, so what if let me try to break it all down, which is going to be hard to do. What if a supervillain, right, one of the last few remaining supervillains, wanted to become a celestial? What would it take to do that? So he set up a list of things that have to happen, or a bunch of or a few steps he has to go through to get it. And so he plans on doing all that at the time. And one of the big steps is that he's going to take the multiverse and pit it against each other. And with all the destruction he's going to cause, that's going to get him up a level that he'll be able to become a celestial without having to have been born one. So imagine you being sucked out. If you're a superhero, you're sucked out of the universe you're in, and another superhero sucked out of the universe they're in, and you're just pit against one another. And you start fighting because you don't know if this person drags you where you're at, if this person's good or this person's bad. And they do it in multiple stages and to multiple people. So it's one universe crashing into another one, and one trying to save themselves and the other one trying to defend themselves, thinking they're being attacked by somebody else. So it's over 15 superheroes, half as many supervillains, and it's 70 pages. This isn't like just a 20-page comic. This is a 70-page graphic novel that Eviction Bellum book one is. And there's only 2 books to it. There's book one here, and then there's going to be book 2 in a few months. So if you get both of those, you will have finished the entire story arc in 2 books. And by the end of the second book, it changes the whole noir state for Constant Hustle Comics.
So let's talk about this, because
Okay.
obviously there's a lot to break down, because now what's going on is that I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, so I am not as familiar with Constant Hustle as some other people have, but I think I've gotten the gist pretty well with it. But I don't think you need to read everything before this to jump into this book.
No, because you'll be given the tools you need in order to follow along in the book, definitely.
And so the reason why I bring this up is that I think you could just jump into this, and it's pretty easy to figure out who's who and what's what, and also the idea of what's about to happen in it. And so obviously, but what is this like? Because obviously you said all these characters and are from a bunch of different books. So obviously, if you're a fan of this, so a few things are going to happen. Most likely, if somebody picks this book up, they're brand new, they're going to want the other stuff at some point.
Right.
And so that's very beneficial to every creator involved. It's beneficial to the company, because I'm the same way, where, I came into a company, and whether, any comic company that has a big track record, you get in an entry point and you want this front stuff and you want the back stuff, and it's wonderful. Right. So obviously that's going to happen. But what is this like with all of the creators of these characters? And how is that saying, hey, this is what we're doing? Is everybody on board with it? Because that's a whole tricky thing, because giving up my baby, you can see my little cute elf up there. Right. She's not, I'm very, very reluctant to let her go out alone. Right. And she's getting a baby sister soon. Right. And so I'm very, very scared to let my 2 cute little elves go out and play with others so quickly.
So so Dwayne comes to me and says, hey, this is the idea I'm thinking of. And what it'll do is it'll bring all the characters that we use up to the forefront. You'll be able to see them basically grow into their powers. And by the end of it, regardless of the change in the landscape, you'll still be able to use your characters, and your characters will not have missed or you won't lose anything from them. That was one of the prerequisites that we both said. I'm not going to give you one of my characters if you're going to kill off my character and not I don't get anything in return for
Unless it's not canon.
right, right. So if I give you, something I made up in the seventh grade that I never knew what I was going to do with this character.
Or I'll give you a better real example. If you
Uh,
guys did a Christmas special and
right,
character that is the greatest character got Cole, but it wasn't canon, that's relatively fine for the most part. I think
right,
most people understand the difference between a canon story and a
right,
not canon story. But this is
right,
obviously canon, and that's
right,
where I'm going with that. But
right, right,
continue.
right, right. So we're of course everybody wants their character to shine. Everybody wants their character because it's your baby. You came up with it in the middle of the night while you were sleeping, or at work while you were working, or at the beach when you were there, or whatever. So everybody wants their character to shine. So I have to really give the credit to to Dwayne Welch, because now you as one person have to take, you know, people's characters and you talk to them. All right, what does your character do? What is it? And he took characters that don't even have anything written or have anything out. So he had to talk to those people and say, okay, tell me what's going on with your character. Tell me the power set. Tell me this. Tell me that. What if I did this with him? What if I did that one? You tell me how your character will react. So he really really took the bull by the horns and shaped a story to which you're gonna really see. Think of it like you're a comic collector. Think of it like Secret Wars when the Beyonder showed up. I mean the Beyond, not the Beyonders, but the Beyonder, the white outfit, everything like that. Think about that, and how him being there changed the landscape for the X-Men and changed the landscape. Wasn't it X-Men versus Avengers?
That was A versus X. That came way beyond Secret Wars. A versus
Right.
X was great.
So imagine seeing that, and then that's the type of event it is for us, where it's going to change our landscape to the rest of what we're
So
so.
let's talk about this too, because this is
Right,
where it gets exciting. Because
right,
obviously, this isn't two people fighting. They scuff up. It's not Batman versus Superman.
right.
I love Batman versus Superman. I know I'm going to get flack for it
No,
after
no,
the
no. I
Snyder
did too.
cut.
I did
It,
too. I did. I did.
I enjoyed it. I'm sorry. I'm
I
sorry.
did. I did. A lot of people didn't, and they have their reasons. And don't get me wrong, some of their reasons are valid, but I think for the most part, when it comes to stuff like that, it's a lot of DC hatred and a lot of Marvel super fandom. So no matter what DC comes out with, a lot of people just aren't gonna like it anyway. That's just my opinion.
But the reason why I bring up Batman versus Superman is that
Uh-huh.
that was very much cheesecake, where Batman and Superman have a little scuffle, and then they team up, and then Wonder Woman joins the crew, and
Right,
now they're facing the enemy and dealing with a threat, and then Superman dies, and pretty much taking a bunch of stuff and combining it out of DC. So
right,
obviously, I don't think that's what this is, but also I don't think you're killing anybody either at the same
right,
time, unless you are killing somebody. Somebody's like, yeah, it's cool if you kill my character, I don't mind.
right,
Technically speaking, that would be brilliant if somebody killed their character and then
right,
figured out a way how to play that off, or did if powers pass when somebody dies and that's their super.
right,
Oh
right,
man,
right,
that's
right.
brilliant. But obviously, these characters are going to be changed,
Yes,
one way or another. Their maturity, battle
yes,
scars, I think, is a safe assumption, because that's not a
yes,
massive
yes,
loss. Emotional scars. Maybe
yes.
some of these characters want to be bad guys.
Right. It's definitely
So
it's gonna change their black and white views and make some of them gray. Definitely.
what is that like? Because if you're thinking long term, and stop me again if I'm ruining anything here, but if
No.
you're thinking long term, obviously you have all these comics, they shoot into this book, and then this book is a crossover massive event, and then you
Mm-hmm.
want to shoot out of this again, and you
Mm-hmm.
want to shoot 6 issues, and then at some point you're going to probably have to have a crossover event, whether it's 3 books meet up, or all 6 books, or all 8 books, or all now you add 5 more books into the mix, And
Right.
so obviously you need something to build off of. And so what is this like really planning it out? Because now there's something bigger going on here, because it's now not just an issue of we need to produce a awesome book. We also need to make sure when we shoot out of all of this that there's actual runway for all these books to occur and happen. And it's very cool because now you're actually thinking more like a universe company
Right.
saying, something else. I don't know if I just had Ralph Tedesco talking about Zenoscope with this, and it was very much a similar discussion where
Right.
it's universe building and understanding, getting all your little components now put together. So, what is
Yeah.
that like for you? Because as I stated, you're the watcher in this universe.
It's it's complicated, of course, but for us, and I'm speaking for us as a whole, it keeps the creator on their toes. You're not going to change something to the effect of you can't write, we're not going to have like a character like the Living Tribune that's going to have to get us out of this now because we've wrote ourselves into a corner and we need a MacGuffin to come save the day and get us out of it. That's not what it is. For us, it's when Dwayne explained to me how everything is going to be left, it is you having to really know your creation more than anybody else. You have to really know, okay, this happened to my character. Going forward, what does that do to the series? Because gone are the day for us, gone are the days where you just have a character show up and he busts up everything and beats the bad guy and takes off. There's repercussions for your actions, whether they be good, whether they be bad. There's repercussions for your actions, and our heroes have to basically live in that time because, like, take a group like the Last Line, who just started becoming a superhero group together, and now this event happens. And I'll give you a small amount of it. Their father gets taken in the beginning, so now the rest of the group has to figure out how to be superheroes, work together, because you're talking about a 9-year-old, a 16-year-old, and an 18-year-old. So they got to figure out how to work together. And the strongest out of all three of them is the 9-year-old. So they have to figure out how to work together and then figure out how to put their ideas and their mindset together to find their dad for the objective. Instead of just, going through space, obliterating everything they see, they have to form themselves up to that. They have to become heroes and stay family all at the same time. So that's what all our characters have a paradox somewhere in there. I have these one of them has the power to create a life. So do you go through just obliterating everything, or do you know when you're supposed to use that, or at what gauge you should use that and when you should not use that? When you should let everyone around you know that you have that power, or should you just sit back, check the landscape, see who really needs to be shown what you can do, and then move from there? So we're definitely setting everyone up for success in the future. And one of our big things we say at Constant Hustle Comics is that there's nothing we can't do. You're talking about a medium where you can make anything from bunny rabbits that are ninjas or samurais to killer tomatoes to whatever. So even if we wrote something and you didn't agree with that, we can set the reset and you'll be fine regardless. We make everything work for our people to move forward. And more than anything is we're not a flashy type of organization. We want you to be deep in the story. We want you to have read that and then at the end of it be like blown away by the story. Then you could go back and look at the panels and realize that it's beautiful artwork. But we want you to be engrossed by the story. That's our biggest concern. We want to make deep, enthralled storytelling with artwork that's amazing to keep you wanting to read our books. That is what we want to do.
And then obviously talking about this, because obviously there's a bunch of stuff leading into it, and there's a backstory to everything coming into this, and then we're shooting out of it, and obviously we got 100, I think 40 pages to go through. Book one is this Kickstarter. Book two is coming in a few months,
Yep.
And obviously, one of the things is that, and there's a trend that's going on right now in comics where
Hmm.
there's a lot more what is known as one shots or long form comics, which are 70 pages or 72 pages coming out. I view it as people call it graphic novels. You could disagree with me. It's fine. I call it a mini graphic novel is the new trend in
Right.
comics,
Right.
meaning that it's more than a 32 pager, but it's
Right.
not a 120 pager or 140 pager.
Right.
It's somewhere in between where there's more story. Also, there's no advertisements in it per se, so you're getting the same, basically of 3 issues, give or take, a little bit
Right.
more than 3 issues, and you're getting it all in one sitting. And so I'm very curious why you chose to go this way versus single issues, because it could have been done single issues, it could have been done double issues, it could have been done as a 140-page graphic novel. But obviously, this is something that it's just not you doing it. I've had a bunch of people on talking about this very thing where 64 pages, 70 pages, and Zenoscope, which is a big company, is doing
Hmm.
a lot of one shots right now for
Right.
$9.99 or $8.99.
Right.
There's a reason why, because obviously people want more complete stories at this point.
That's the exact reason why we're doing it this way. I have 3 books that I've done myself, and I'm working on issues 2, second editions for those. But the idea is to complete stories in a time frame that doesn't lose audiences. So this one, with us doing it now, and then a couple of months from now, us doing the second version of it, is to bring people in and to make them fans of these characters. That way, moving forward, while people are digesting these 2 books and the 140 pages it'll be by the end, we can get the creative engine and the business engine and the marketing engine ready to go so that we're coming out with books at a better time frame. That is one of the things that we're working on at Constant Hustle Comics, is getting our books out at a better time frame. And the people at one of the or 2 companies that I have say put this together or put that idea together, that are models for me, would be Concrete Comics and Wingless Comics. Because when they move on a project, before the Kickstarter is over, they're already moving on the next, the number 2 for that project. And this is putting us in position where, okay, these are out. The marketing side of us is pushing these 2 books. Everybody's loving these 2 books. We have everybody's first editions online. We have a store on our website itself. People can read up on those and in the graphic novels all together. So we can gear ourselves up towards making sure we have scripts for the next 3. Everybody has scripts for the next 3 books. Everybody has the artist they want to pick for the next 3 books. Everybody has a letterer, even though we usually only pick one letterer, but we have the letterer and the colorist and everybody in frame ready to go. We set up a marketing strategy, we set up a business strategy, and then we start moving forward with that. And that's the idea. We want to make a complete story, and we want to give us some breathing space so we can get the next part, or I don't want to use the Marvel phase, but the next phase of our us putting some books out in gear to do exactly that.
And then obviously there's a lot of stuff going on, and it's getting very interesting with indie right now with what's going on and how people are putting in engines in there. And I have my
Right,
own thoughts, but I've never run an indie comic. At
right,
some point I will enter it. It's just a matter of when I got enough projects on my hand right now. I got
right,
enough
right,
projects.
right,
And
right,
there's a saying, when your hands are full, if I'm to start another project, I'm going to drop everything in my hands. And well, I would prefer just man, when things ease up is where I'm at. And that's the
right,
other thing that's also very important is infrastructure. As I was
right.
stating, and I think this is something that people don't understand, is that it took me going through essentially 3 podcasts, and I operate essentially 2 of them right now, to actually build out the infrastructure and build out an entire system that works. And I'm now building out my own marketing arm, and I'm figuring all that out. And it took me a while. And now I'm getting to that stage and inching closer and closer. but it's very important to have infrastructure, because if you don't have infrastructure, and there are people out there who are advising people, and there's big debates that I've had with people on podcasting and a variety of other strategies. And it's so important to have the infrastructure in place before you go get a big person or a big name, whether it's indie comics or anything you do. Because if you don't have the infrastructure, it's great that you got that person, it's name recognition, but it's not going to go as far, and it's actually going to wind up burning you. And so
Right.
it's super, super important to have infrastructure. And I think people don't get that in indie comics. It is complicated.
Right. It's like when we start a Kickstarter campaign, that book is already 90 to 95% done already. It is going to be finished regardless, but we use Kickstarter mostly for marketing and for to be able to ship to everyone, to put in as many hands as possible, and then to bring as many people into the universe as possible. But if you're setting up a book and you get, by some freak of nature, you get Jim Lee to do a variant cover for your book, and you've already paid him, but you don't have the money to pay the rest of the people, and your book maybe has 1 or 2 pages that are done, then even though Jim Lee did your cover, you don't have anything else. So you're going to die on the vine, because eventually people are going to get tired of seeing the cover that you just came up with and you have nothing else to show. And we've learned that the hard way as far as our individual.
I think it even goes further than that. It's also access.
Right.
Well, one of the things that people don't understand is that I've been doing this for 8 years. The
Mm-hmm.
amount of access I have should not exist for somebody who's never produced a comic book. I am
Right.
one of the most odd people out there, but if you go through, and I'm not going to name drop because I don't want to embarrass a bunch of people, nor do I want people to start hitting me up saying, hey, could you make an introduction?
Right.
But I have access to some of the top cover artists right now in the world.
Right.
And I've earned that access, but even having access to even anybody, or even understanding how to do anything, how to understand how to book a comic cover. Haven't done one of those yet, but I have a pretty good idea. Not to mention that I know a bunch of people where if I have a question, that's the other thing too that I think is super important right now. And it seems that obviously you looked at a few companies and how they run, and obviously you've networked, and it's
Right.
very important to, understand even that side of things and having information and access, because it's great, but how do you even get at Jim Lee, or even somebody close to Jim Lee, or even
Right.
somebody 50 degrees away from Jim Lee to do
Right.
something? This is all back to infrastructure and understanding things.
Right. And that's you know, it's a not an art, but it's a thing that takes time. It people need to realize, or people need to know that you are a real creator. Everybody wants to make a comic. Very few people will see it through to the end. That's just the nature of the beast. Or they'll see one through to the end, and you'll never hear from them again, or whatever. And that they have their reasons. They do whatever they do. That's fine. But for people, if I contact somebody and I say, hey, we would like for you to do a cover for us, and we would like to know your rates, or whatever the case may be. When I first started, most people wouldn't even answer that question. Now they see my name, they look up what we're doing, and then now I get called. Now I get calls and emails back, and usually pretty damn fast, because people want their work to be out there. Not only that, but people want work. So
Yeah.
when we do things like that, it's not on a whim. It's not anything. We make moves like that strategically. So when somebody may say, "Hey, I can get this big artist to do a cover for me," and I'll say, "Hey, I know another artist that may not have the same name recognition, but their art, the way they do what they do, is perfect for your book." And somebody who's got big name recognition may not even say anything about the work that they've done for you. But somebody who really wants to work, somebody who really wants to be a part of something good and something they feel is gonna put them out there, they'll
So
share with everyone they
crazy
know it's gonna
statistic.
help.
I
Huh?
don't know if you know this, but there's all these comic shops, slightly outside of indie, but it goes right into what you're saying. Is that a lot of comic shops out there are almost variant exclusive shops, and they go and hire all these big artists, and I'm not going to name names, but I think everybody can think of five off the top of their head and know it's not Midtown Comics. I want to get that off the chart here, because Midtown Comics is not a variant shop; they are a big, massive comic shop, but
Right,
there are shops online that are big. I buy from Midtown. That's why I say it, because
okay,
I really like Midtown Comics.
right,
But one of the things that's very interesting is that all these shops hire a bunch of comic variants, top people who are charging anywhere from $600 to $2,000 a cover, are paying license fees to a variety of different, companies. And guess what? A bunch of those shops are struggling because it's not that their social media is bad, it's they are very dependent on these variants selling. And well, you know what it is? They're counting on name recognition. And it's very important to understand that name recognition, it's good, it could help, but it's not the answer. I know
right,
this, hands down. I
right,
happen to do very well with indie. I happen to do very well with, big names. And it goes into that because a lot of times a big name might not push out your work. And it's something to
right,
really understand and pay attention to, because all of a sudden what starts happening is that small names might push out your work a lot faster. And, if somebody has 1,000, likes on their page, or 1,000, page likes, but they put it up on their page and there's real fans there, 300 people might flock and buy that cover,
that's
or it might
right,
get a lot of engagement. But then
that's right,
again, sometimes the other person puts out something and it does very well too if it's a big name. But it's very complicated because big names don't necessarily equal big, responses back.
right, right. And I mean, I'm not against using big names. I'm not against that at all. When it fits and when the medium that you're using is fits the name, and that name is going to benefit you somehow. That name is going to help you, because if that name is not going to help you, then you are just wasting your money and your time. And I'm not even the first person, the first indie to say that. I've heard it from others, and I didn't know whether I was on the same page as them. But then, with me looking at the indie game as a whole, and looking at other people's Kickstarters and what they do and things of that nature, yeah, yeah, that's definitely it. You have to do what's best for you, and then people aren't just buying your books; they're buying you as well. You have to be a very, unless you're doing something, unless you're of a huge name, you have to be that person that they feel they can relate to, or they can talk to, or they can ask you about your books, and you're not going to shoo them away. Or like, we just did a Comic-Con in Philadelphia over the weekend, and the way we are at Comic-Cons, if you want to come up and talk about our books, we'll tell you everything about our books. But if you want to sit and talk about the new X of Swords books that are out, if you want to talk about Marauders, if you want to talk about X-Men, then we can sit there literally the entire Comic-Con and have a humongous conversation about that. We don't try. We are as relatable as anything, to because at heart we're storytellers, but we love
It's very
comic books.
important.
So we
It's so
we
important.
right. We'll talk to anybody about anything.
I'll tell a story about this.
All
So
right, go
I
ahead.
actually do panels about stuff, and
Mhm.
I do panels about Gundam, and I do panels about comic book investing, and
Right,
all the time, I leave 10 minutes of questions and I say, hey, look, guys, I know there's a bunch of people here who want to ask questions up front right now, and there's a bunch of people who are going to want to ask questions. I'll hang out outside for the next hour. If anybody
right,
wants to talk, there's a cafeteria if you all want to go downstairs and we all could just sit at a table and just
right,
continue the panel. I'm more
right.
than happy to do it. I legitly, if everybody gives me 5 minutes just to get this autograph over here, we can continue. So
Right.
excuse me. And legitimately, if you all want to come join me to get the autograph and we'll just continue to talk while we're all waiting online for it, I'll do that too. And then, yeah, a few people have actually come and sat down with me at a table just in like the cafeteria of a con, and we were speaking for 25 minutes about this.
Right. Right.
Great, because I got no problem talking about any of this and somebody picking my brain,
Right.
because this is how I get fans, and it's so important. But I want to get you some more fans here. So obviously I want to talk about your rewards. So obviously you have a bunch of rewards going on. I think you have a digital reward that's happening. And I don't know if your early bird ended at this point or if it's still available, but obviously, at one point there was an early bird and rewarding
Right.
people for that. And then
Early Bird
obviously,
is still up, and we're going to add another digital one within the next probably 3 or 4 days, to where when we only have 2 weeks left, we'll add another digital reward as well. But yeah, we have plenty of backer tiers
and
from
so there's obviously the Eviction Digital Reward, which includes a mini issue, and then there's a swag bag, T-shirt type reward, and
mhm.
then we get into the actual covers of the book. And so I'm sure that you're going to tell me which is which exactly. So obviously this is obviously, I don't know if this is a cover of your book, but this is Comic Hustle, and this is your company. It's a very cool
Right.
piece, and I want to show that.
That's a digital poster or wallpaper. That's what that
And
is.
so that's there, and then there's this right here,
That's
which is
a
very
few of the
cool.
characters from the book itself. Avery the Astonishing is in the front in the green, and the Shining is Black Dragon is above her.
And then we have this out there, which is cool too.
Yeah, the man upstairs. He's one of the characters from the book as well, and these and that's the last line. The family that I based off my family. The
And
family
so and so
based off my family.
and obviously the reason why I'm doing all this now is because this actually gives context of what these characters look like, and some of
Right.
them look similar, some of them look different.
Right.
This is obviously I think one of the villains,
Yep.
and
Yep.
and so that's a very different style that's being projected in there. And
Right.
then also there's this right here, which is just a panel scene of what's going on, and so
Right.
that's there. And then this is I think cover A.
That is cover A, and I love that cover. That's the one team on the right is SF3, and then the team on the left is the last line, and they're both superhero teams, but they don't know that. So when they get brought into this situation, they have to face off against each other, which is going to be a big deal within itself. And the person in the middle is called Kasai, the creator, and she's basically one of those. She is a celestial that can bring life to planets, bring and take away.
And then the other side of that is this, which is cover B. And
Right,
obviously, this is more fight oriented. It's not as
right,
angelic. It's not as Justice League esque, for lack of a
right,
better
right,
word.
right. And
This
this,
is way more of the showdown.
right, and the guy who did this cover for us is the artist for GI Joe for IDW, and the colorist has done work for IDW as well. And we try to use we tend to use industry professionals that have been working on books for a while. We'll bring on some new artists if they have if they have a great portfolio, and we find them to be dependable and somebody we could call family. We'll bring a new artist on, but we tend to bring on vets that you just usually haven't heard of before, that but do amazing work like this.
And so obviously, there's only two covers I think you can get at this point.
At this point, yes. At this
And
point,
and I don't know if you were going to add more later on, but I kind of like the idea of only having two options, and the reason why I like that, and you could do it around. It's on my Kickstarter. Is that
right,
it makes it an easier choice, and it
right,
also doesn't seem like you're just bombarding me. You go on a Kickstarter and there's 15 variants. From an economic standpoint, when you're printing anything beyond one book, printing
right,
costs go up because you got to change
right,
out the printing style. And then
right,
secondly, also, it can be overbearing. The saying
right,
is that this is a funnel. Kickstarter is a gigantic funnel.
Right.
And when there's less exits, it forces, easier choices. I just backed the
Right.
book by Ben Dunn. There's like 7 choices on the entire Kickstarter, which is not a lot.
Right.
And it makes it very easy. And a lot of the choices is that it's softcover, hardcover, sketch softcover, sketch hardcover. And now
Right.
what you're doing is that you're having very little choice or digital. There was like 5 choices on the entire Kickstarter. And it's very, very helpful because now, you only have so many options. But obviously, maybe, I don't know if you're going to add more covers as this goes on.
It wasn't the plan to add more covers. We plan to add a digital tier where we have other creators, books that we plan on putting out, like a big, maybe 15 book digital tier that you could come on for. I don't know how much we'll charge for that now, but we plan on adding something like that within the next few days. And I think that'll
Because
be about
digital
it.
doesn't cost you any money beyond just the
Right, right. And that's the idea. The idea is for it to cost us as little as possible, and but to also give a lot of value to the people who are becoming part of our universe by being part of this Kickstarter. And we also have a reward or a digital tier where you can become a villain in the Constant Hustle Comics universe. And we've done that in the past, and a lot of people love the way we do it, because we work with you specifically to make sure that you like who you are and how you are and things of that nature. And we used one of those characters in this book, in the Eviction Bellum book. And she was through the moon when we told her that her character was going to be in the book. She really loved it. So yeah, that's a great tier for us. So if people watching want to be a villain in our particular Constant Hustle Comics universe, please click on that. And then our big one, our top one, is the that we will basically produce a 10-page comic and distribute it for you, whoever you may happen to be. Design your character, write your story, the whole bit. And that's our most expensive one, our most expensive tier that we have in there.
Yeah, so there's a lot of stuff out there, and obviously, people, like a bunch of this stuff, and obviously, Kickstarter is meant for indie, and people really enjoy, this type of stuff, and obviously, some people also use this 8-page position or 10-page position to say, okay, how does a comic work? And I want to write a comic, and it's very much a mini class in writing something and producing something, and obviously it sort of is part of this universe, but it could also be, an entry point. And, I don't think you guys would be opposed that if somebody says, hey, I'm a semi-comic writer and that I want to just some help writing my script and you guys can help it out, and then we can see where it goes. And if all of a sudden people really like it, I'm assuming, and you could stop me, that whoever created this sort of has first dibs on it, wants to continue, because that's another thing too, is that you're a growing company, and not to put you on the spot, but if all of a sudden this thing takes off and people are like, oh man, this is great, and then all of a sudden you're like, man, where can I get this? And this character is awesome and it fits in the universe. I mean, if be that this turns into a permanent gig for somebody. So, it's not out of the question.
No,
not to put you on the spot.
No, not at all. It's not at all out of the question. It's the way our setup is put together is it's all in how much you truly want to be a creator. Somebody who picks that tier really wants to be a creator. They really want to have what they had in their heart and in their mind come out. And that's the only person that will pick that. That's the only person. That's the only person that's going to pick that. The only person that's going to pick that is somebody that's going to say, I want it to come out. I want it to be, on this page. I want it to be a part of
I could think of a few reasons why somebody would pick that, but I have a really good reason why somebody would pick that, because it's like the ultimate gift to somebody. Also,
right.
A very cool gift to somebody, and it's like, if you don't know what to get somebody, and you have a decent amount of money in your life, So for me, if I had an abundance of money, I don't necessarily have the time to write a comic.
Right.
So I would definitely go for that if I had enough money and I was running shop because I just don't have time to do that right now in my life.
Right. Right. Right.
But I think the point, even going further though, is that obviously people want to create and people really want to do comics,
Right.
and it's complicated to do it because there's a saying where it's you know knowing how to do something, like knowing how to run a podcast effectively and actually interviewing,
Hmm.
and what I do is not easy, and I make it seem easy, and all the mistakes that I made 50 of them, and I guarantee you in this interview, there's 50 mistakes, and if you go through it enough times, you're going to spot all 50 of them. But
Right.
right now, the average viewer might spot only 10 of them because they
Right.
don't know what mistakes I made and all that stuff, and they say, "Oh wow, he only made 10 mistakes. He's not a professional." You didn't catch the other 40 because
Right.
I'm a
Right.
professional and I know what I'm doing. So there's a know-how, and that's what this tier is really good for, is that it's the know-how and the knowledge versus saying somebody who's saying, hey, I've never done this. I don't know where to go with this. I have
Right.
character design, or I have a commission of a character design, and I just want to play with this. And then, hey, if you guys want to go play with this character and throw me something as a creator credit, I'm down for it too. And I'm
Right.
sure that some people who pick this tier might just want to go down that route and say, hey guys, I really like this character. I just want to create a credit. Every time you
Right.
run this character, I want to say created by so and so and so and so, and obviously I
Right.
want comps also for free, and
Right.
I'm
Right.
happy.
Right.
But,
Right.
but but
Right.
but enough joking aside. Obviously, I like that tier a lot because and even the villain tier because it adds more to it, and it's not something that is done in traditional comics.
Right.
And it's kind of nice to be part of something and be part of a universe, and also have something actually get distributed out. And that's the other thing too that I think people don't realize is that it's not that you're just saying, hey, here's all 8 pages, have fun printing it. It's
Right.
the fact that you're going to be distributing it as well. And I'm sure that you would be more than happy if somebody backs that tier to give a lot more insight into that entire process.
Oh yeah. Right. 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 Definitely. I mean, we're gonna step with you through it from beginning to end. We're gonna, make sure the character design is approved. We're gonna make sure that you like the story as a whole. We're gonna make sure that you like the panels, the coloring, the everything. You know what I'm saying? It's not a quick deal. We're trying to set whoever this is up to have the same love for storytelling and for comics that we have, and probably come on board as well. So we really want somebody who has a love for the medium to back at that level.
Yeah, no, I think it's great, and I think it's a really good introduction into something, and it's really about how much you want it. I speak to
Right.
a lot of wrestlers. I speak to a lot of people. I just spoke to somebody called Kaya McKenna, and she moved to Iowa for 3 months to become a wrestler, training under Seth Rollins, WWE Seth Rollins.
Wow.
So,
Okay.
so she's great, and it's an issue of how much you want something in life, and
Right.
it's very very interesting when you're figuring out how much you want something in life and what you want exactly. So obviously, it's a very interesting situation with
Yes.
that. And I think this is really really smart in a lot of ways. And so I'm very excited for whoever backs this tier, and hopefully somebody will. And yeah, it's something that's going to be very interesting. And again, it goes to how much you want them. So obviously, there's a lot of stuff going on. I'm not going to press you too much on this stuff because I want people to back this project. And obviously, this is an entry point. It's also an exit point. It's also, relatively going to be wrapped up either at the end of 2021 or early 2022, I think, is
Right.
fair to say. And obviously, 140 pages isn't a lot. It's also going to be done, and that's the other thing that's nice about doing it in graphic novel format is you do 2 Kickstarters with this project, and you don't have to do 6 because the
That's right.
longer you have a Kickstarter project going on, the more things can go wrong.
Right.
And that's the other thing too is that I'll give a great example. If Dwayne says, "Hey, screw this,"
Right. Right.
and not
Right.
not saying he will, but if he had to do 6, there's more room for error.
Yes.
Versus 2, obviously that's out there. So obviously I'm
Right.
not going to push too much harder on this, and I do want to talk about a few other things that are
Okay.
comic related. And
Okay.
I'm curious how you feel about Kickstarter because Kickstarter has been very interesting as of lately. where a lot of projects have been funded on Kickstarter in the last, I would say, 20 months.
Mm-hmm.
But also a lot of things haven't gone the way they should have. And I've been attacked in a lot of ways, and I think
Really?
he was wrong, and I think I was right. But I'm biased, where I said when Keanu Reeves and Scott Snyder and Jeff Lemire and Ryan Brown and Charles Soule and all these big names came in, Todd McFarlane, that a lot of projects got funded. And apparently all throughout 2020, when all those people were on, more projects were actually funded. And when they
Right.
all left at the same time the next year, less projects were funded.
Right.
And so the idea is that a ship, a rising tide raises all ships. And I basically said, hey, what happens when all these people leave? If you're like, oh, nothing's going to happen. Nobody's going to be affected. Well, it turns out a lot of people were.
Right.
Turns out less projects were being funded, and a vacuum was created. And so I'm curious how you view Kickstarter, because you've been doing this for 5 years. I don't know exactly how long you've been in Kickstarter, but it's very abnormal when big names come in and then they leave, and it sort of changes the way things are set up a little bit.
I think it changes the way people
Perceive.
It changes the way people perceive it. It also brings people who normally wouldn't be on Kickstarter to Kickstarter. Those, I forget how many millions of dollars Ravager made, the Keanu Reeves thing. I forget what it was.
Berserker.
Yeah, Berserker. I'm sorry. But it brought people on Kickstarter who normally aren't on there, and they probably forgot the name, like I just did, of the comics. So they just went under comics on Kickstarter and funded other projects because of that project. That's always great, because people need that help from time to time. Not everybody puts themselves in the best seat to get funded on Kickstarter, because not everybody knows how to.
No shit.
Not everybody knows how to. So, but that doesn't make him any less of an artist. It doesn't make him make.
Oh yeah. I'm not saying this.
Right.
I'll clarify my point, where I believe that everybody has a right to be on Kickstarter.
Yes.
There's a good chance that I might be on Kickstarter come November or December to fund this. I haven't decided yet. I believe I have a right to be on Kickstarter, much like you do. Now, what I also recognize is that I don't have a right to raise millions of dollars. I have the right to try to make millions of dollars on Kickstarter. I did $1 million on my podcast. I don't know what I would do. I would have a bigger problem than the money. Meaning that, like, I don't know how you even phantom that. It'd be really funny if everybody donated $1 and then made everybody else donate $1 just to torture me. I really want to mess with somebody. That's what you do. But I believe that they had a right to be on it. But also, it raises problems, because now that there's less projects being funded because they're not on there, I mean, it's an issue where they helped a bunch of people, and that's great. But that's kind of like, if I give you $500, I give you a $500. If I give everybody of my friends a $500 gift card on Kickstarter, that helps a bunch of projects happen. But what happens the next year when I don't give them the $500 on Kickstarter? It's like, so I'm curious where you think that.
What helped that it was that everybody was home.
That too.
Everybody was home. Everybody
was bored.
Even though you were home. You were bored. A lot of people were making extra money.
Diamond shut down.
Right.
For 4 months.
So it was a horrible time, but it was the best time for indie comics as a whole, on that angle, that specific angle. That's it. It was the time where you didn't have to know what you were doing per se, in order to get something funded. Where and even I don't have it down yet as far as I wish I did have it down, but there is a way you're supposed to start. There's a way you're supposed to market in the beginning. There's a way you're supposed to market during. There's a way you're supposed to stay in contact and engaged after. There is a certain amount of podcasts you should hit during. There's a certain amount of people's pages you should be on. There's a certain amount of like specialty groups that you should be hitting up a certain amount of days. I mean, there's a whole algorithm to this whole thing.
There's a whole amount of money you should spend on ads. There's a whole amount of
Right,
money you should be, shooting out emails to people. There's
right,
also there's a bunch of stuff that look. There's plenty of people who legitimately do just podcasts. They don't spend any money and they
right,
understand. There's a whole bunch of stuff. There's people who do nothing, and
right,
and they don't they just say screw this. I'm not doing jack shit, and they get
right.
funded
Yeah,
nicely. And also there's a whole different attitude. So I'll give an example with myself, and this is probably going to hurt me. If I run a Kickstarter, my goal is going to be very, very low. The only reason
right,
why my goal is going to be low is because I'm doing this project anyway. It's just a matter of what perks do people want and what assurances do they want by backing the project. So
right,
I'm going to be marketing like crazy. Don't
right.
think because the more money I raise, the less times I have to do a Kickstarter. And I'm going to be talking about this entire issue on Friday night on somebody's podcast. And it's going to be a very, very uncomfortable conversation. It doesn't have to be, but I think it's going to be because it's going to be a reality.
Right,
Raising money is not we celebrate in America, it's an obligation.
right,
I am in the process of negotiating a sponsorship. It is an obligation. It is not something that should be celebrated.
right.
It's helpful. It makes things happen. It could go either way at the moment, but it's an obligation. It's not a celebration. And the fact that it was a good job, man. I'm like, what are you talking about? It's a responsibility now.
We, I feel the same way to a point because when we when we set a dollar amount, we set a dollar amount for the sake of getting the best product we could get out to the people who believe in us and believe in our ability to get this thing done. People don't back projects like this on a whim, especially now, because now people aren't getting the kind of money they were getting before. Now
Oh, I
people
know. I know. I
right
know.
aren't doing the things they were doing before. So now if somebody gives us money now, it's because they truly believe they love what they've read from us before, or they read it and they believe, man, this is going to be really good. So we owe them to do the best work we possibly can do. That's why we don't cut any shortcuts when it comes to stuff. If I jump on Kickstarter the day that we're supposed to be putting out to everybody, let's say the digital copy of their books, and I tell them it's going to be postponed a week, it's because something went wrong, and I want to make sure you get the best thing. We want to make sure you get the best copy of this book you could possibly get.
We're circling around a question, and not because, and it's going to just highlight exactly what you said.
Right,
Obviously, this sort of what is the future of indie comics, and obviously, even with what's just happened, I mean, let's be realistic. Unemployment's ending.
right,
The federal side of unemployment's ending, and I don't mean to get political, but I don't think it's going to be extended much beyond September at the minimum. Obviously, COVID's kicking up. People are going to be mad rushing to work, and there's going to be a fight for work. I know
right,
because I'm in between jobs right now, and I've been prepping up for this, and
right.
I have a lot of applications out, everybody. So if you're hiring, you see this podcast, and you're in the tri-state area, please shoot me a DM, guys. I need a job. But or anything, that's legal. That's legal. I'll say that. But
Right,
kidding aside, obviously now I think what's going to happen is that I've seen it with Zenoscope, and the reason why I bring this up is that San Diego Comic Con, their con, a lot of people I feel were spending less money, and I like their company. I spend less money. I spend
right,
significantly less money, than I normally do. And they have a con coming up this Friday. I'm going to spend like $25, and then they have one after. I'm going to be spending only what I need. And so I'm not, and I'm a comic book investor, so I buy doubles, triples, and sell them on eBay for 3 times. And I'm not
right,
doing that anymore because I got to survive, and I got
right,
bills to pay, and and I'm selling comics on eBay, and I know that it's getting tougher. And so obviously all the money and all the projects I back, and I'm just tightening up my positions.
right.
So obviously, that's where we're heading. So where do you see all this going? Because it's very different, and I think we're going to enter a very weird position because people's
Well,
money is about to get a hell of a lot tighter.
so I think the uh, the business model of indie comics is going to have to be ready for that. And the way you get ready for that is either you change the kind of projects you're putting out, or there's always digital. You don't have to go to a Comic Con and pay X amount. You can go right to constanthustlecomics.com, go right to the shop, and get any one of those books digitally and read it through and have it forever. And I mean, there's going to be a point where most people like myself love physical books. You may not be able to buy, uh, 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 $100, $200 worth of stuff. You may only go to 25, like you were saying. So you're going to pick the ones that stick out to you the most, or if you're an investor like you are, the most you think you can get good resale value on. It's going to put a lot of hobbyists, a lot of people who just do it just so they can tell their friends they did it. It's going to probably stop a lot of them. But us that are true to the game, us that really want to get our stories out there and are willing to raise our production value up, that in Constant Hustle Comics, we say we're indie in size, not in production value. It's going to make people like us just better.
I
It may
agree.
it may weed out the weekend warriors, but people like us is going to
It's
make us
it's
better.
so weird. It's so weird. We're having such this interview is more about me than you, which is so bad. Because I'm telling stories that are crazy. So I started this project in 2020, and I
Mm-hmm.
couldn't agree with more. And I think it's just going to echo what you're saying. And a bunch of people after I started, about 30, 40 in, a bunch of people started copying me. I would say there's 10 people who legitimately copied my style or tried to copy my style. Now, what they didn't understand is I had 6 years on them from another show. So I was
Right,
coming in as a seasoned interviewer. And then out of those 10 to 12 people who did it, a bunch of them aren't doing it anymore. And I'm like, I did 90 interviews in 2020. I'm on track to do 170 to 180 this year. And what's crazy is that a bunch of those people who started doing this stuff didn't, they're not doing it anymore, or they're
right,
doing it every other week, and I'm doing 4 a week. Sometimes I do 6 a week. I
right,
mean, so I'm at that stage where it's like I'm powering through, and I'm not saying I'm perfect, but I'm powering through, and it's
right.
a commitment. And so, it's that idea where I think what happens is that I think weekend warriors go for a little bit and then they tinker out, but then what you have from creator side at least is those people who stick through. And then also I agree that I think what's going to happen is there's going to be way more selection that's coming, and I
Yeah.
think it's something that is bound to happen. And that kind of leads me into another question, and
Mm-hmm.
it's also controversial, is that I live in Connecticut, so I'm not that far from New York City,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm not going to New York Comic Con. I think it's going to be a disaster. And it's not political. I just think that you're going to have 100,000 people, vaccination cards. I hate to say this, but I think, vaccination cards are going to be very much faked. I think
Mm-hmm.
that this is not going to be solved by October. And I'm very pessimistic, which means I'm always right eventually. Where do you see cons going? Because it's something that's very interesting where I'm just looking at the writings on the wall for me. I mean, it's and plus the economics out of it, but tabling the money and all that being taken out. Where do you see cons going? Because for at least for the next few months, because it's
Uh,
crazy. I mean, it's a wild west COVID. I think there's more infections right now in America than there was last year at the same
right.
time.
Uh, I think I think that people like myself are being careful, so they're masking up. And at the one over the weekend, it was put on by Eric Cooper. It was called Black Label Comic Con in Philadelphia, downtown Philadelphia, at the Westin Hotel. It was it was a mixture of people who were masked up on both sides. If you look at all the pictures that we took on our IG and everything like that, um, most people are masked up on both sides. I think people are waiting so much to come out that they will come out. Do I think people are going to fake vaccination cards? I think that's a given. But I think,
So let me ask you a question because this is going
okay.
to sort of get into it. How big was that Comic Con?
Oh, it was only a 1 day Comic Con.
So was it 1,000 people? Was it 2,000 people?
I say it was maybe 1,000.
So I think it's a little bit different. So I'm thinking about going up to a con in Poughkeepsie in about 2 weeks,
Uh huh.
and that con maybe will have 600 to 700 people.
Right.
So that's a very very small convention
Right. Right.
versus going to 100,000 person convention like New York Comic Con. And
Right.
so I think once you start tearing up into the 10,000 and then 20,000, I think 10,000, and I hate to say it, it's just rules of numbers, I guess, is the way I
Yeah.
view it, is that once you hit 10,000, the risk increases significantly,
Right.
not to mention that you're also in New York City, which is a very dense populated city. And so
Yes.
you got like 9 to 11 million people. And to even get to the con, you're going to be interacting with a bunch of other people, mask or no mask. I just view it that it is a breeding ground. I mean, that is ground zero for this. And
Right.
I could just imagine, because let's be realistic, con crud has always been a thing. And
Yes.
if I go back to a con, I've never been sick at a con. I'm not going back till 2022 June,
Right.
earliest.
Right.
And that's the earliest I'm even thinking about it. I might just wear a mask indefinitely
Right.
because I hate to say this, but it's I tend to be purple politically, and it has nothing to do with politics. It legitimately has to do with the fact that I don't want to catch what you got.
Right. Right.
No offense, but I have a physical disability, and when I get sick, I feel it in my joints. I don't want
Right.
to catch what you got, and it's not COVID that scares me. It's COVID plus three.
Right. 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 Right.
And
I
I'm not
got
trying to
you.
scare anybody, but
Right.
that's how I feel. Not to
It,
mention that I would rather be part of the great digitalization.
right. 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 Well, it's a people are still going to be pushing for creators are going to be pushing for cons like myself because there's nothing like the rush you get from table in the con and talking to
I
people
feel
about
it.
your
I feel it.
project
As a panelist,
and
I get
having
it.
people be there and then you see that they're digging your book and you ask them to take a picture with it and they're happy to take a picture with your book and you realize in those moments that it's your creation that you once again that you dreamt of in a dream or you thought of in the shower or you thought of at work that now is all in physical form and somebody really digs it. So I think we'll be pushing for it. I would say this: if this variant, Delta variant, gets as bad or is displayed for us as bad as COVID was in the beginning, then cons for years will probably be virtual at that point. Cons for years will probably be virtual at that point.
Well, as much as I am pessimistic, I do think that cons are going to come back in full swing in 2022. I
I hope
I,
so.
I, I really believe that they're going to. I just don't know what it looks like for the rest of 2021, and
Right.
I also am concerned about something bigger, which is the end of 2022 and the beginning of 2023, which is economic crisis, and
Right.
that's coming. I mean but that's a whole different beast in of itself because
Right.
that's also much like COVID, an equal discriminator.
Right.
Um, and so that's something to have a whole different ballpark about, and that's what I talk about on my other show. And we're going to talk
Okay.
about Friday with somebody, so that's a whole different discussion. Um,
Right.
but anyhow, obviously, I do want to give you an opportunity to self promote yourself. So obviously, where can people find you? I know how we went right from all the negative COVID horrible shit to self promotion here, but that's how we roll here. So obviously, where can people find you? Because I know Facebook's big, Twitter's big, Instagram's
Yep.
big. Your
Face.
Kickstarter
You
is
can go to
huge.
you can go to facebook.com and / Constant Hustle Comics. You can go to instagram.com / c.h.comics. You can go to Twitter C Hustle Comics. You can go to the website, constanthustlecomics.com, or you can just go to Kickstarter and look up Eviction Bellum Book One, and it's there too. We're all over the place. And if you want to, shoot us a line, ask us questions about the Kickstarter, whatever, just leave your questions on there, and we'd be happy to talk to you. No problem.
Yeah, and I've been saying this is that obviously a lot of people are open to asking questions. You can shoot questions on Kickstarter, obviously comments here if you see something in a group and you're super interested. Obviously, pretty much you're going to be tagged in a bunch of this, so that's something also you could shoot questions to. And so it's very cool in that regard. And what I've been saying, and I'm going to keep saying, is you got to support indie. And what that means is that you have to support indie comics. And so you got to back Kickstarters first and foremost. Every dollar matters. No dollar amount is small enough. Whether you're just pledging $1, whether you're pledging $5 or $10 for a digital book. Obviously, you can always pledge for a digital book and then a little extra. I do that sometimes, especially if people have early bird specials. And, I'm like, hey, I want to see this project get funded, so I'll throw an extra $3 in there. And I'm more than happy to on that front with a lot of people. So I do that. Also, sharing it around. It's super important.
That would be perfect. I mean, if you look at it and they say, hey, that's not really my thing, but I tell you what, I'll put it on my page and have other people look at it. We'd appreciate that as well. We truly would.
Even going beyond that, right now, that obviously if it's not your thing, but sharing it around is super helpful because you don't know who's watching. But even going forward beyond that, two things. Obviously, if you back it, it's really cool to share it, and that's extra brownie points. And then the other thing as well is that, look, money's tight right now. And you said it and I know for a fact a lot of people have received a lot of money with unemployment, and their 39 weeks are up, guys. I know it very, very well. And so obviously people right now have less money. Things are getting tighter. Obviously people are very, very scared. People thought they were going to be back in work a lot sooner. And so right now people say, hey, look, I like this project. But, if you can't afford it, times are tough. Everybody gets it, but sharing it because your friend or somebody who you're friends with or in a Facebook group might be like, hey, I know exactly who this project is for. I have friends who are like Mecha Comics, right? And they don't know anything about Kickstarter. Like, yo, man, thanks for showing this to me because you never know who's watching. And it goes a long way because that person might go and pick up that $1,000 tier. And you never know, or might pick up $100 tier or a $50 tier, and you shared it, and boom, like out of nowhere. So very, very important to understand that and push that forward. Also, what is something might be like, hey, this book really isn't for me, but hey, you've got like 3 other things that I'm interested in, or boom, they might back this and then they want everything else too.
Right.
So obviously that's something to pay attention to. And so obviously following people's social media is really big. And I've been saying it also that please, if you are right now in an economic tough time, take care of yourself first.
Definitely.
Please do that because obviously, we got to get through COVID before anybody else. And I don't want anybody going in debt to buy your comic or, obviously I'm indie too. Buy me a coffee, guys. Buy me a coffee. It's a way very much like Patreon where, a few coffees here, for everybody who has extra money because this is an indie show at the moment and it is super, super, super important to support indie. And indie is just not comics. It's everything out there.
That's
and so
right.
You have to support, obviously sharing, liking, but money, we all need money. Money isn't happiness, but you can't be allowed in the happiest place on earth without money, which is Disney. So not saying I want to go to Disney, but obviously supporting this show is super helpful. So on that, but if you have to choose between supporting this show and the Kickstarter, please support the Kickstarter. Obviously I want to see this project get funded, so please go support that Kickstarter. But if you have a few extra dollars, throw it my way too. It goes a long way, and I am very appreciative of everything that happens and every day. But everybody who supports me, I love it. So thank you so much, everybody. And I'm going to give you the final word.
Oh, please look up on Kickstarter .com for Eviction Bellum. Come to ConstantHustleComics.com and take a look at everything we have on there. If you have any questions, reach out to us. If you don't want to back it yourself for whatever reason, no hard feelings. please just share it or put it in somebody else's in front of somebody else that you think would possibly want to see it and back it. And we appreciate your time, and thank you for having us on, Andrew. We really appreciate you.
Well, thank you for coming on, and I couldn't have said that any better myself. So that's a wrap.
All right.